It is 210 BC, and a bizarre procession is slowly moving across the foggy landscape of eastern China. The carriage is flanked by wagons piled high with rotting, unpreserved fish, a deliberate tactic to mask an unbearable stench. But the fish aren't the cargo. They are a cover-up. Hidden inside the central wooden carriage is the rapidly decomposing body of the wealthiest, most powerful human being on the planet. This presents one of history's ultimate forensic cold cases. How does a man who possesses absolute, unmatched authority end up dead in a wagon at just 49 years old? To understand his death, we have to look at his life. Before he was a corpse in a wagon, he was the king of Qin. After 2 centuries of brutal, fractured warfare between rival Chinese states, he systematically conquered them all, officially unifying China by 221 BC. Look closely at these bronze coins. Conquering the land was only the first step. He forced his newly acquired massive domain to function as a single, highly regulated machine. He standardized the weights and measures, the axle lengths of carts, the written script, and the entire economy, ensuring these identical coins were the exact standard of trade everywhere. The traditional title of king was entirely insufficient for achievements of this scale. He discarded it. Instead, he invented a completely new title, Huangdi, or emperor. In his mind, he had elevated himself from a mortal ruler to a living god. But living gods still bleed. Throughout his life, he survived highly sophisticated assassination attempts, like an attacker swinging a lead-weighted lute. The constant threat of murder left him deeply paranoid. He slept in a different palace every night and surrounded himself with heavy guard details. He had conquered his physical enemies and decreed that his new dynasty would rule for 10,000 generations. Yet he could not stomach the idea of actually passing his throne to a successor. The only obstacle left to total, eternal control was the biology of aging. He decided he was going to defeat time itself. The emperor turned the full economic might of the Chinese state toward finding magic. Ancient folklore spoke of mystical islands in the Eastern Sea, places like Mount Penglai, where immortals lived and guarded a legendary elixir of life. He deployed vast state resources to find it. The most massive maritime expedition was led by an alchemist named Xu Fu, whom the emperor outfitted with a massive fleet of ships, huge stores of grain, and thousands of young boys and girls intended as sacrificial offerings to the immortals. Xu Fu eventually realized the grim reality of his mission. The elixir did not exist, and returning to the capital empty-handed meant guaranteed execution. So he took the fleet, the supplies, and the offerings, and simply sailed away forever. With his expensive ocean voyages vanishing into the horizon, the emperor grew desperate. He abandoned the search across the sea and turned his attention back to his own court, demanding that his physicians and sorcerers brew immortality from scratch. The court alchemists focused their new internal experiments on this naturally occurring bright red ore known as cinnabar. Heating cinnabar to high temperatures releases a highly toxic byproduct, liquid mercury. To the ancient mind, mercury was a miracle. It flowed perfectly and never decayed. Alchemists deduced that consuming this indestructible metal would transfer its eternal properties directly to the emperor's body. The first emperor began swallowing daily pills and potions laced with liquid mercury. Instead of preserving his tissues, the heavy metal began bioaccumulating. It systematically attacked his central nervous system, causing severe neurological damage, extreme localized paranoia, and violent mood swings. The exact medicine he commissioned to grant him eternal life was actively shutting down his organs. Which brings us back to that rotting carriage in 210 BC. The emperor wasn't commanding a battlefield when he died suddenly at age 49. He was touring the eastern coast, still actively hunting for immortal beings and the elusive elixir. His sudden death created an immediate political crisis. Terrified of a violent power struggle, his closest advisors orchestrated the rotting fish cover-up. They hid the smell of his decay from the public, while they rushed the carriage back to the capital to secure their own positions of power. The illusion of control shattered almost instantly. Without his iron-fisted rule holding the state together, the eternal Qin dynasty collapsed into a massive, bloody civil war, a mere 3 years later. Today, his most famous legacy is the one buried in the dirt with him. The thousands of clay soldiers of the terracotta army stand silent guard over a ruler who desperately wanted to reign forever. Qin Shi Huang forged an empire and wielded authority that most rulers could only dream of. But no amount of absolute power, wealth, or political violence can negotiate with human biology. His relentless, paranoid chase to escape death is precisely what put him in an early grave.